Hello, welcome to the new format for Drinking with Comics. I'm Sean Charles Baker, and yeah, we're trying something different. I moved from Los Angeles. I'm in Clarksville, Tennessee, and I'm still reading a shit ton of comics and drinking good beer. And I want to tell you about both. So these are going to be short episodes, just like 10-minute new comic book day or something, whatever I read recently that really did it for me. So first, courtesy of my neighbor Vince, because that's how we do things in Tennessee. We bring each other beer as we travel around the country. He was recently in Michigan and brought me a brown ale. It's the Bel Air Brown from Shorts Brewing. And this is fantastic. 7% alcohol, really, really good brown ale. Both myself and my neighbor Vince really like brown ales, so we kind of find stuff when we go out of town, whatever, local breweries, and turn each other onto it. So, yep, Shorts Brewing, Bel Air Brown from Michigan, fantastic. Let's do the cheers. Oh, it's the stuff. So I was in LA recently. I did not get a chance to see my former co-host Mike Wellman, but he's doing well. I talked to him and we wish him nothing but the best. And hopefully at some point I'll have him on here. So, but yeah, I'm just going to do something. I don't know, I miss doing the show. It's not going to be the same show, obviously, but I like to talk about comics. So let's talk about comics. This week, my poll list included X-Men Red, number 16. This is Fall of X. If anybody is reading the X-Men stuff, you know that the Hellfire Gala was completely fucking insane this year, and we're still dealing with the fallout from that. I love X-Men Red. I started reading X-Men again well after Powers and House. I really had to be convinced. X of Swords went by. I still haven't read that, but eventually, right around the time Planet-Size X-Men came out, I tried it, really dug it, and I've been reading Immortal, X-Men Red, the regular X-Men book, and then some of the offshoots. Not everything's up to snuff, in my opinion. A couple series I thought were laughable. The Magneto series, I read 3 issues. Trial of Magneto, garbage. Just, I don't know. There's a weird quality difference between the main books and then some of the offshoots. So anyway, in this Fall of X era, X-Men Red has just been fantastic. It really reminds me more of Rick Remender and Jerome Opeña's Seven for Eternity. I'm probably misremembering the title slightly. It's been a couple years, but this, like, I'm reading this a couple months ago. I'm like, when did X-Men, like, this became this interstellar fantasy book that's so good? And X-Men Red just really holds the standard set by. Before that, it was the Sword series, which I thought was great. Al Ewing did, and now he's doing X-Men Red, and it's just been fantastic. I used to, for most of my life, reading X-Men books, which has been on and off, but been off for quite some time. The characters I hated the most are now the ones that I absolutely adore. Storm. Well, I never hated Storm, but she just was a non-entity after. Like, I loved her in the 80s with the Mohawk, no powers, still kick Cyclops' ass, leather vest, switchblade. Love that Storm. After that, I don't know. I didn't really care so much. I didn't hate her, but always hated Magneto, other than Morrison's run. He became one of my favorite characters, and then they fucking killed him. And I know, like, in the post Hickman X-Men, it doesn't matter. Like, they took death off the table, right? Because they just built reincarnation into the story. But right before that happened, Magneto and Storm both destroyed their backups to earn the respect of the Iraqi. And yeah, he's been dead since. I know he'll be back at some point, but like, I just really came around to loving the character and I killed him. So I thought that was kind of great. Even Charles, who I just, I've never really cared for. Just, I started reading the X-Men when it was like around 227 for all the mutants. And my favorite era is the Outback. And just never really wanted Charles around. Whenever he'd show up, I just thought the series kind of blew. Don't need the Blackbird and all that shit. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really, really digging these X books, and I can't wait to tear it. It's literally just brought it home, so I haven't read it yet. Next, Haunt You to the End. So this is Ryan Cady, Andrea Muti. So they also did a book called Infinite Dark, and way back we were going to have Ryan on Drinking with Comics, and it fell through at the last minute for that book. But Haunt You to the End. So I do a podcast called The Most Horrible Library with former Drinking with Comics co-host Chris Saunders. Check that out. And he's the one that turned me on to this book, and it's really, really good. So this is 5. I think there's just one more issue. So this will be collected in like a month or so. Totally recommend it. Ryan Cady does really interesting things with kind of big swing sci-fi, and this is definitely that. I don't want to go into too much, but basically the human race, because of climate change, is about to be extinct, and there's this kind of ghost hunter guy that he thinks he's found the ultimate proof that there's an afterlife, and it's super important now because of extinction facing humanity. And so they go to this island that was once owned by like a big oil conglomerate, and a lot of deaths happened there that were swept under the rug, yada, yada, yada. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted places on earth. And it's just been really engaging, really cool. The art's awesome and super like dark, and just it fits with a book that's about haunting and about proving the afterlife and the eventual extinction of humanity. So Haunt You to the End, really, really cool. Again, I think there's one more and it'll be collected. It's from Top Cow. That was really the only things on my pull. I will be grabbing Fish Flies #2, but I have a second pull set up at my shop in Chicago because now I can go there so easily, and I've been going back and forth, and I love Amazing Fantasy. In Clarksville, I go to Rick's Comic City, fantastic store. In Chicago, I still go to Amazing Fantasy in Frankfurt, and my good friend Mike Shin is there, and he pulls stuff for me. I pick it up about once a month. So I'll be getting Fish Flies by Jeff Lemire. Really, I've become a huge Jeff Lemire fan. But this was a surprise. So those two were what was on my pull. I looked at the shelf at Rick's Comic City, and there is a new Army of Darkness book called Army of Darkness Forever. And, there's been, I don't know how many Army of Darkness comics in the last 15, 20 years. So many that it's just ridiculous and like whatever. But this was written by Tony Fleeks, who Chris and I had on Most Horrible Library for Stray Dogs shortly before I left LA. There's a live episode. It's up. I can put a link to it here, but check that out for sure. Stray Dogs is amazing if you haven't read it. And I thought, what the hell? I'll give this a shot. This is dynamite. And this picks up exactly where the director's cut of Army of Darkness, the film, leaves off. And Army of Darkness, probably my least favorite Evil Dead film. My ranking goes Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead 2013, Evil Dead. Well, probably Army of Darkness and then Evil Dead Rise. But, and Ash versus Evil Dead is fantastic. But, any Evil Dead's good Evil Dead for the most part. So it picks up where the director's cut leaves off. So Ash takes too much of the sleep formula, sleeps to 2093, wakes up, looks like Rip Van fucking Winkle. But it also then uses the original ending at S-Mart, but it seems like it's positing that Ash. So the director's cut, he wakes up in the original ending, he goes back to S-Mart, and then like a Deadite shows up and he shoots it, and it's very Ash, come get some. So it looks like they're positing that is actually evil Ash that went back to 1993. Very interesting. So this is setting up a story it's going to continue the medieval time, and it's got Sheila basically going to the king and saying, like, we didn't get rid of the evil completely. You still have the Necronomicon. This is going to come back to bite us in the ass. Nobody believes her. And it looks like somebody's trying to resurrect evil Ash. And then it's 1993, and then it is to 2093. So pretty ambitious. And, Tony Fleeks, I love him. So I'm going to read it. I'm going to have Rick's put this on my pull. I can't believe I'm saying this. I really didn't expect to be reading and enjoying an Army of Darkness comic today. That was my pull for the week. I just want to talk about a couple things from last week. I was gone for 2 weeks, so I had 2 weeks worth of books. The standouts. This is amazing because once again, Robert Kirkman has the book I most eagerly anticipate reading every month. And that book is Void Rivals. So my good friend Mike Schinnebarger at Amazing Fantasy in Frankfurt turned me on to this book. I didn't know this. This is a spoiler everybody knows now because it's well past, right? This is issue 4. Issue 1 came out And it's a story about two warring factions in space that are running out of water and they hate one another, blah, blah, blah. They're kind of both fighting over the same resources. And the book ends, they didn't tell anybody about this. So if I had read that number one the day it came out, I can't imagine how amazing it would be. Some of you out there may have had that experience. If you did, please put it in the comments. I want to hear about it. It'd be like going to see Prometheus and not knowing it tied into Alien, right? Because the end of Void Rivals number one, or maybe it was number two, I don't know, whatever, Jetfire from the Transformers shows up. And you realize, holy shit, this is now, Robert Kirkman has the rights to do G.I. Joe and Transformers. He's calling it the Energon universe. And he's basing the Transformers storyline kind of around the original cartoon more. There's a couple characters, this like lizard alien bounty hunter thing that shows up in the book. I'm like, holy shit, I remember that thing. But that was his announcement that, hey, I'm doing Transformers. So Void Rivals at number 4 continues to just, I love this book regardless of the Transformer. In fact, there's a Transformer cameo in this. It felt slightly shoehorned in. It was still cool because it was one of my favorite Transformers. I don't like I'm very particular about Transformers. I like the original Marvel comic, especially when Simon Furman was writing it. I like when Simon Furman came back and did Regeneration 1 about 10 years ago. And I like the cartoon and the movie from 1986. That's it. This ties into that. I'm happy. Void Rivals, Kirkman said, I'm going to tell my own story. It runs adjacent to the Transformers stuff, but it doesn't necessarily revolve around it. And so far, it's really compelling. I really, really dig it. And last week, his Transformers came out, but Kirkman's not writing it. Daniel Warren Johnson is writing and drawing it, and I could not be happier. A couple of years ago, Mike Wellman, my former co-host, turned me on to him via the Beta Ray Bill miniseries. My favorite comic that year, one of my favorite comics ever. Really kind of, man, Daniel Warren Johnson knows how to dial into this, like what I call hobby store sci-fi. In the 80s, there was this, sci-fi is real touch and go with me, and the bigger, more operatic stuff, not so much. But this hobby store stuff where it's kind of, there's a lot of like low end analog kind of equipment that, it's almost as if the people making it hadn't anticipated digital to the degree that it came in and changed our world. And so everything in sci-fi, a certain niche of sci-fi in the 80s was way more analog based. And there's just a certain, I don't know, man, there's a certain tactile sensation to it. And Daniel Warren Johnson has that. And I'm picking it up in this Transformers comic. Also, he did do a power bomb last year, which I loved. It was a wrestling comic. I don't do wrestling, love the comic, but there's actually a scene in here that some I know have taken issue with where Optimus Prime suplexes Starscream. But to me, I was just like, Daniel Warren Johnson's in the house. Awesome. So yeah, a really cool first issue. I'm very happy. I bought a bunch of stuff last week, a couple other things, just what's the furthest place from here? Number 14, I really need to go back and reread the series from the beginning. I've just been reading it as it comes out with some gaps, and I love it. I love Tyler Boss's art so much, and just kind of the like real weird indie, I don't know, there's an indie rock vibe to this big time, but not indie rock as it's known now, where it just means people dress like from thrift stores, like old school indie rock. Newburn number 11. This is Jacob Phillips, Sean Phillips' kid, and Chip Zdarsky. Fantastic street level crime book. Can't recommend it enough. Number 11. I'm sure the first 2 arcs are collected. Really, really good. Zdarsky's been, I guess he was writing Daredevil for a long time. Now I think he might be writing Batman or something like that. He's really made a name for himself in the last couple of years. I don't read any of that. I'm sure it's great. I've heard his Daredevil's amazing. Maybe I'll read it at some point. But Newburn, absolutely fantastic. And then I'm real touch and go with Benjamin Piercy's Ghost Rider. Been reading it since the beginning. There are issues that have a definite old school Clive Barker undertone, and that's what keeps me coming back for more. There are other issues that I don't really care so much about, but I'm always like, I'm going to drop it. And then I get the next one. And I'm like, I'm going to keep it. I didn't expect to get an annual. I got the annual. I'm not sure what to make of it. I haven't read it yet, but I don't know. If it's good, I'll mention something on the next episode, which will be next week. So until then, I'm going to take another sip of this delicious Shorts Brewing Bel Air Brown. I'm going to say hi to all my friends out there. And if you like this, you know what to do. Hi, I'm Sean. Join me and my friends every week for the Horror Vision, where we talk about horror movies.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive:
the world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure: murder. From the twisted mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadow Play Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.